Welcome to What's New in Jenkins LTS 2.346.3. Along with me, I have Mark Waite. My name is Darren Pope, by the way. I should know to say that, right? Mark, how are you doing?
Great, Darren. How are you doing?
Well, you saw how it started, so let's see if we can end it better than that. Here we are at the end of the 346 line. It is 346, right?
It is 346, okay. And you're right, we are at the end.
So what does that really mean? We'll get into that as we go through this. Suffice it to say, September is going to be a big deal if you're not running Java 11, which we'll talk about later. Mark, what is it that you do? Because we didn't even tell who you are yet.
Okay.
Forget about me. I'm not even being a good host and introducing you correctly.
I'm the Jenkins Documentation Officer. I've been a release lead for Jenkins releases, and I'm a member of the Jenkins Governing Board.
And I think you also take the trash out at home.
I take out the trash at home, okay. And I'm a maintainer of the Git plugin and the Git client plugin.
GSOC this year around Git and Git cache has been very interesting.
It has, and very grateful to the contributions. Grateful that Google is willing to fund Google Summer of Code. They're paying people to write code for open source software. It's really great.
So let's get into what we normally talk about. If people haven't been with us before, a lot of people may not understand the difference between Jenkins weeklies, which is sort of self-titling, right? It's Jenkins comes out every week, more or less. More than less, I should say. That would be the more proper way to say it. But then we have Jenkins LTS. So what is Jenkins LTS?
So Jenkins LTS starts with a baseline weekly release that is selected by the community. The baseline release is selected based on user feedback. So for example, the baseline that we selected several months ago was 2.346, and we chose then that we add the .1 to it, spend a few weeks stabilizing to be sure that we know what's in it, deciding which things we should backport to it from later weeklies, and then we release it. And then 4 weeks later, we release a .2. And 4 weeks later, we release a .3. And that's usually the end of the cycle. So we have a 12-week cycle that starts with a .1, continues on to 4 weeks later a .2, and then a .3 in the 12-week period. LTS means long-term support, and we support that release for that 3-month period. Security fixes are provided for it. In general, watch carefully if something needs to be backported, if we're surprised, and backports arrive to help people have a good, stable version.
So that's the basics of the LTS process. Let's take a look at the changelog for this last of the 346 line. And fortunately, and this is what we would expect, especially in the last of an LTS line, is it should be fairly short. It should not be a super long changelog. And this time it's short. There's 5 items, if I can count correctly. But that first one is interesting.
It is. That first one we intentionally backported a change to the Spring framework in order to avoid noise from security scanners that mistakenly might report that the version of Spring, that Jenkins is vulnerable to problems in the Spring framework that it was bundling. Jenkins is not vulnerable to those problems, but it is much simpler for our end users downstream if we just upgrade the library version and include the upgraded version. Then their scanners, whether they get it right or not, won't tell them, oh, there's a problem in this thing.
Right. Said a little bit differently, there was a problem in 5.3.19 that Jenkins was not, what's the word I'm looking for?
Not susceptible to.
Right. But to make everybody happy and not set off fire drills, by upgrading this, the scanners think 5.3.20 is wonderful.
Right. And really, one of the healthy behaviors that we've come to like very much in Jenkins is upgrading our dependencies. And many times the dependency upgrade may not bring any compelling value to Jenkins, yet the practice and the active effort to upgrade a dependency means we've been through that process multiple times. And when an important update occurs, it's much less dramatic because it's usually only a single step to get from whatever we're doing now to the upgraded version. So the practice of regularly upgrading dependencies is just a healthy thing for us to do, and we keep doing it.
Okay, so that one was more of a let's make sure everybody has good weekends type deal.
Exactly.
So that's
right.
a good one. Now, what about these other four?
Well, so the others are, for instance, the topmost one there on log records and discarded messages is sort of a subtle one that we had made some attempts previously to limit messages, and it turned out those attempts were not as effective as we'd hoped. So we actually had to back some things out. And it's a good thing when you need to read those messages, they should be there. We want to be sure that they're readily available. The next one is more about a user interface improvement that, hey, sometimes the breadcrumbs that were included in menus needed to be revised a little bit. And it's just a nice UI fix.
Yep. And this next one's similar, I would assume.
This next one I actually like a lot because
Okay.
I've been surprised at how addicted I am to the progress bar on my builds as they're going.
Is that the 3-dot thing that you just watched?
No, it's the horizontal bar over in the build history that's showing as it progresses. And there were periods where it was a little more difficult to read against the background. And what this did is tune the color just slightly so that it's more visible, so that it's more readable. And okay, I mean, really, did I need that bar? No, it just was a comfort thing for me. Oh, it's advancing. So it was feeding my need to watch my build progressing without having to read the log file directly.
And this last one,
Oh, that last one is a cool one. That is a really cool one.
talk
because-
about edge case, or it
Right.
feels edge case.
Very, very much so, right? What was happening was there were cases where an error in the communication between agent and controller was causing degenerate behavior on the agent, and the agent would then fall down saying, hey, I tried to allocate far too much in order to give somebody an error message back.
So-
really, really a cool story.
It's a cool story, but it actually, although it's not going to be related about what we're talking about next, and there were no upgrade notes I noticed for this release. Normally you could look at the upgrade guide and we'll take a quick look at it. For .3, there's no notable changes, which again, for the Last of Us cycle, it's what we expect.
Right, that's pretty common.
Now, we're talking about remoting, and a lot of times you might see an agent disconnect, right?
Mm-hmm.
This would have disconnected because it UMI'd, right? Or it got into, whether it disconnected or not, it got in a really bad state.
Right.
But recently, within Declarative Pipeline, and I believe this is Declarative Pipeline only, let me pull it up here. So if we take a look, and I've gone into a controller and gone into pipeline syntax, I have declarative directive generator set up. And under agent, if I select label, now we're used to having labels before, you could just give it a label and go on about your business. But there's now this retry count.
Right, and I think this actually is available also for scripted because it's being used by the build plugin command on ci.jenkins.io.
Okay.
But let's talk about it in context of declarative because I think this makes it very obvious. All right, if we see what it says there, if set to a number greater than 1, some agent or restart related failures can be recoverable. So to tell the backstory behind this thing, ci.jenkins.io, in order to reduce its costs, had intentionally configured to use AWS Spot instances. Spot instances are a much cheaper compute resource. However, AWS tells you very honestly and upfront, Spot instances will be reclaimed by AWS with not more than 2 minutes warning, and they'll take the resource back and just shut you down. Well, what that meant is we would have agents running a job that was going to take 30 minutes, and 10 minutes in, it might get reclaimed and shut down. And that would then cause a failure of the entire pipeline, and someone would have to go in and retry that pipeline. Well, with this addition, now what I've seen happen is one of the agents goes offline, and that step is retried automatically inside the pipeline, and it proceeds. Yes, it takes more time because it threw away the work that was just sacrificed, but the retry actually helps get the job done and does not discard all the work that was done on parallel branches that had been successful.
So you said step there. Is it just step or stage, or is it a little?
And I confess, yeah. I'm not sure at what level. I've still got to do the research to find that. So I'm not sure at what level the retry is being applied, and that level of language sophistication for me is usually beyond me. I know enough to insert the retry value here and say, I want to give it up to 3 times to try it and hope that it will help me in those cases where it can.
Right. And again, this is specific to pipeline. This isn't anything about Jenkins core. This is in a very specific version of a plugin, of specifically the pipeline model definition plugin. Now, this is the reason why I was questioning, is this declarative or not? Because PMD, I thought was declarative only.
And you're correct. This is the declarative pipeline, and that's why the changelog here says the agent retries option has been added. But I believe the way it's implemented is actually by calling retry code that's available to scripted as well.
Okay.
And the reason I think that is because of build plugin, the pipeline wrapper that we use to test Jenkins plugins is doing this, and that's where I first saw it. Was, oh my, one of my tasks on one of the parallel branches. Okay, I run JDK 11 on Linux, I run JDK 11 on Windows, and I run JDK 17 on Linux, and one of those 3 failed. But it immediately did the retry because it detected this failure mode of having lost a connection to the client, to the agent.
And losing it in a specific way. Right.
That's the piece that it's beyond my depth to be sure I give the accurate description. It is that there was a failure mode that it detected, and it said, this is not terminal for the whole pipeline. I can retry this and let the pipeline itself continue to success.
And this issue, which is the 49707, I was actually taking a look at the default value is 1. And what 1 means to me, if I'm reading this right again, I just started looking at this after Mark and I talked about it earlier today. 1 to me is, that is the 1. Like it's the default is 1, so I'm going to run it once. It's not a retry, like try it one more time. It's like zero-based math. Right, that's what I'm trying to figure out really what the 1 means, and I think the 1 means, okay, the value is 1, so it's not 1 doesn't mean retry it one more time. It just means I'm going to do this once.
I suspect you're right, but I haven't checked it to be sure. I think that would be what I would expect, because I would assume the default would be retained as what was the old behavior, and the previous behavior was no retries, which would be try once, right? And so try once is what I would assume is happening.
Yep. But neither Mark nor myself have dug in deep enough to really figure it out.
Right.
But the issue here is 49707, so auto retry for elastic agents after specifically a channel closure.
Right. And I like that the description there tells us what's happening, that it is after channel closure. So the communication channel between the controller and the agent is closed, and closed in a way that the pipeline detects that it was closed. Then it says, all right, we can do a retry.
Right. So it's an interesting thing that you may not know about, and if you're using any kind of spot instances or a good use case for that, but even if you've got flaky agents, this would be, not that you want to set that retry value to 1,000, because at some point you want to fail at least within a reasonable amount of time. But maybe setting that retry value, or retries, I think is the technical phrase, to maybe 3, 5, whatever you feel like, may be worth it.
Yeah, so. Well, and for me, if I look at the example of the Git plugin, automated tests for the Git plugin, particularly on Windows, take as much as 30 minutes to complete. And if the failure happened on the Linux branch, for instance, I would have wasted those 30 minutes of a successful test set on Windows, whereas if I just retried, the 2 branches of the 3 that had passed would be lost completely unless we do a retry. The retry now lets me, okay, I only have to take the waste of redoing the tests on one of the 3 legs of the parallel.
So I just went back over to the directive generator. So with a 1, this looks normal.
Right. Which
Right.
which hints default, right? So okay.
Right. Whereas if I say 2, now it's label, retries, which is an interesting way to look at label, but hey, that's how it renders, so that's what we would do.
Right.
So if you're using spots, or I mean, it gets back to what the issue had here, channel closed exception.
Right.
Right.
It's a good story because any resource, whether it's cloud hosted or not, may not be always reliable. It's the reality of compute resources and networks. And so having an option here that says, hey, if I lose the channel connection, go ahead and retry.
Yeah. If I lose it in this specific way that I'm aware of,
Right.
give it a retry. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? It fails again,
Right.
right? And then you have to start all over again. Well, that's what you would have had to have done for everything in the past. Whereas now, like you were saying, I've got 3 things running in parallel, and it was just this one down here that went up, but these 2 were great. This one does a retry automatically, and it's like, oh yeah, we're solid now, and it goes ahead and finishes. You've saved time.
Right. Exactly. That I like that. That's a nice plus.
Okay. So lightweight LTS. We are now 6 weeks from October 1st, ish, right? Or 7 weeks. Have I lost track? Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, October 1st is Hacktoberfest.
Oh, I was trying to decode where you were headed. Yes,
No.
October 1st.
We'll talk. We're going to go out, and then we'll work our way backwards.
I see. Okay.
So Hacktoberfest, so the Jenkins project will be, I'm assuming, participating again in Hacktoberfest this year.
Absolutely.
So when we come back in roughly 4 weeks, which I think is still the locked date, I don't remember the date for the next LTS, which is based on currently 361. Correct? Right. And should stay there
Right.
at this point, minus some backports that may come to it. So whenever that comes out in about 4 weeks, we'll talk more about Hacktoberfest and how you can get involved with that.
Mm-hmm.
But before Hacktoberfest starts, we have DevOps World. And the Jenkins project is going to be at DevOps World in beautiful Orlando, Florida, after school's already back in. And since you're watching this, and don't tell anybody, but if you go ahead and check out in the YouTube page that you're watching on right now, if you look down here, there is a registration. Where's my mouse? There's a registration link, and if you use this discount code, it's discounted $400. You only pay $950. So all the details about the event, that's September, technically 26, 27, 28, and 29. The actual conference is the 28th and 29th. The Jenkins Contributor Summit is on Tuesday the 27th. Please
Right.
tell me I got all that right.
You
I think
got
I
it
did.
exactly right.
Okay.
We're delighted to be gathering together for a full day on the 27th to talk about Jenkins. We'll review where Jenkins has been. We're going to talk about where it's going. We're looking forward to presentations on user experience. We'll probably have some conversations about platforms and about Java versions and about alternate architectures like ARM. I expect we're going to have a lot of fun talking about where Jenkins is headed next. Please join us at the Jenkins Contributor Summit.
Now, again, we're walking our way backwards. October 1st for Hacktoberfest. DevOps World in Orlando, the 26th, 7, 8, 9. But then we're talking about the LTS coming out in September. There's one really small thing that's going to take place then.
Really small thing, huh, Darren?
Yeah, as in Java 8 is gone, no longer supported. So when you try to crank up the 2.361.1 and you're running Java 8 to start it up, I don't know what's going to happen.
You
Actually, I
get a
haven't tried it
message.
yet. There's a message.
There is
Okay.
a message, and the
Is
message,
it polite?
It is. Well, calling it polite is delicate. It's as polite as it can be.
Okay.
There's a message that says, "Sorry, you're running a Java version that we don't support any longer," and it then tells you need to run at least Java 11.
And then does it stop?
Yeah,
Does
it can't. It
It does a
continue.
sig kill, right?
Right,
Okay.
it cannot continue. So it's got just enough components in it that Java 8 starts it and sees the message to say stop.
So what does that mean to the viewers now?
It means they need to upgrade to Java 11 now so that they are ready when September 7th arrives and 2.361.1 becomes available and requires Java 11. It's much better for them if they'll upgrade to Java 11 now in an independent effort, because the current versions of Jenkins all support Java 11. There's no reason to delay the Java 11 upgrade, so upgrade now so that you are not changing two things at once. Change Java now, then come early September, you can switch to 2.361.1 with all the benefits that come with it.
And it's not just the Java that's running the controller bits.
Right.
This is going to be the one probably where you're going to bang your head against the wall more than just the controller.
Right. So the Jenkins project intentionally recommends that agents should run the same Java version as the controller runs. And specifically, if you've said, oh no, but I can't do that, you've got to know that the Jenkins controller ships Java bytecode to the agent. And so if the Jenkins controller requires Java 11 and it ships Java bytecode to an agent that's running Java 8, that Java 8 agent probably can't run that Java 11 bytecode. So it is important that your agents upgrade from Java 8 to Java 11. We just had an episode, even on something as carefully maintained as ci.jenkins.io, where we were surprised, oh, whoops, we've got some agents that are still running Java 8. So we actively went out, our infra team moved them from Java 8 to Java 11. So this is a good chance for you to use the system information page on each of your agents to check to see what version of Java is it running.
Now, what do you tell someone that's like, well, I still have to build Java 8 applications? What's the answer for that?
That's a nice, simple answer. You can run Jenkins with Java 11 and build applications in Java 8 or Java 11 or Java 17 or even Java 18. Jenkins happily will run builds in other Java versions. All you need to do is define a tool and tell your job to use that tool. So you can build with Java 8 or Java 7 if you wish, or Java 13, whatever version you need. Just get your controller and your agents onto Java 11.
And preferably the same version of Java 11, preferably now in this world, the same distribution of Java 11 if you can.
Right.
And don't use a mix of Java 11 and Java 17.
Right.
Again, we want the things to be the same and as same as possibly can be.
Right. It's particularly in a transition like this, it's really healthy to change as few things as you can. So choosing, hey, we're going to use, in the case of the Jenkins project uses Eclipse Temurin as our base JDK. And that's the JDK we bundle with our Docker images. That's a JDK that we know runs on 64-bit Intel boxes, 64-bit ARM boxes, System 390, and PowerPC. So it runs on the lion's share of hardware very nicely. And Eclipse Temurin works great. If you say, oh, but I need something more exotic, yes, we know other distributions work as well. OpenJDK works just fine on the Linux distributions. We've certainly used it with other distros as well. Just be mindful, this is a good place to synchronize things to make your upgrades to Java simpler and cleaner. And please use current versions of those. We've had some bug reports from people in the past who said, I'm running 11.0.1. Well, the current version of Java 11 is 11.0.16. They release every 3 months. So when you say you're running 11.0.1 or .2, you are years behind on the Java 11 code.
So, a couple of things out of what Mark just said there. The Jenkins project itself uses Temurin, and only Temurin, to run the infrastructure.
Right.
So, if you want to run something else, it should be okay.
Mm-hmm.
But just know that the Jenkins project is using Jenkins to build Jenkins. And if the Jenkins project is using Temurin, that means it's getting exercised. How many minutes per day do you think? If you were to split it out to different branches, I mean, if you were to do the Cartesian?
A lot, because you figure there are times when we have several hundred agents connected to ci.jenkins.io concurrently. Yeah. So lots of work happens with that JDK.
Yeah. And I'm not saying, I'm going to duck and cover here for a moment. I'm not saying that Timiran is the best. Mm-mm. But I am saying from a Jenkins infrastructure perspective, it is exercised the absolute most.
And I think that's a good way to say it, right? I have a particular need with one of my really old Raspberry Pis that I need a 32-bit distribution that isn't available from Timiran. And so I use somebody else's for that one exotic case, and it works okay. But the reality is, if you choose to run Eclipse Timiran, you're using the same distro that the Jenkins project is using, so you're getting the benefit of all the testing time we do.
For free, by the way.
Right.
Because that's one less thing that you should have to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key part there. Now, people may say, okay, well, I'm using container images to do my builds. I don't think you need to be totally concerned about that. But let's go through this for a moment. If they're using Kubernetes for their agent, so because if they were using Docker to run an image to turn it into a container, that's not as big of a deal, except usually when you're using Docker like that, you're probably baking an image that has the inbound agent in it, the agent.jar.
Mm-hmm.
And if in that kitchen sink image that you've created, you're still running Java 8, you will have problems.
Correct.
Come September, you'll have problems.
You've got to look to be sure that your agent is executing with Java 11. And so
Correct.
Do the system information page and see what Java am I running there.
But if they're using Kubernetes as their agent, then they've got a pod. And within that pod, there's a magical container that spins up in there called inbound agent, I think is how it's named or labeled, which in theory should be pulling in the right one based on the Kubernetes plugin, I think. That's the one I don't remember.
Yeah,
so
what I'm trying to
what I'm trying to say here, though, is if you're using Kubernetes to run your agents, like what Mark was saying, you might want to just spin up go grab what a full pod looks like for that agent and put in, just use that pod and put in a couple of sleeps in each of the containers, just sort of okay, which Java do I have? What is everything looking good? So that way you can be sort of warm and fuzzy, because once you upgrade to 2.361.1, if you've got anything less than 11 running the bits, you're going to be playing a fire drill that you don't want to be playing.
That's right. So now's a good time to check. It's also a good time this is a good excuse to sanity check your configuration as code. Hey, does it actually represent exactly what I want running? And if not, now's the time to fix it.
And you're planning on taking holidays between now and September 7th, just go and cancel. Just work on this.
Wait a second.
Oh, wait, you're taking vacation.
I'm taking holidays. Yeah.
Just trying to give everybody a fair warning. And, by the way, although you are going to be on a holiday next week, have a fun time, by the way. It just sounds absolutely miserable for me to be outside for a week. Mm-hmm. I know you'll have fun with it, though. The week after that, the plan is for every Tuesday, starting after... Mark, do you even know what the date is that we were talking about? Because we haven't written it up yet, but whatever. Okay.
Let me do a quick
23rd.
Look. It is
so
Tuesday
every Tuesday,
we start. Starting
on August, good grief, I'm writing September, August 23rd, up until DevOps World, so the week before DevOps World, so it'll be the 20th will be the last one of September. We're going to be having specials talking about, obviously we'll be talking about Java 11 some more. We may even show some details. Maybe a good one for that will be, hey, let's go grab, because we should have the RC for 361. If not, I can just grab 361 as a weekly, and spin it up with Java 8 and let you see what you could run into come LTS in September, right?
Well, and we can look at, by that point, we should have draft changelogs and draft upgrade guides. So we can do a pre-look. Hey, the upgrade guide already says this. The changelog already says this. Here are things you should be looking at. And those are things that we can remind people. When the upgrade guide says this, it means it, and this is what you should check.
If there is an entry in the upgrade guide, you should read it and heed it. Mm-hmm. Because it's not there just for light reading on the weekend. It's just not. So we'll be doing those leading up into DevOps World, and I think that's it, isn't it? I think that's everything we needed to talk about today.
Well, and then we've got September, probably 8th or 9th, we'll do the What's New in 2.361.1.
That'll be the big. And then the RC for that comes out when? It's soon, right? Is it?
Yeah, so I'd have to look at the calendar. Due date, I think, is mid-August. Usually they give us 2 weeks before the release. So,
right, and I think that would be the week of that first one, so that'd be the 24th,
so
5th, somewhere there.
August 24 is the day for the release candidate for 2.361.1.
Okay. Right, so we'll be back in 4 weeks. Actually, that's not true. We'll be back in 2 weeks on Tuesday the 23rd. I've already forgotten the date, 23rd. And then talking about whatever it is we're going to talk about, because we've got to talk about what we're going to talk about. Mm-hmm. Because we need to understand what we're going to talk about before we start talking about what we're going to talk about. Yes. It's Friday.
It's Friday.
It's Friday, and I saw humans this week that wasn't just my family. So it's been a different week for me. So we'll be back in 2 weeks-ish, 10 days. I don't know. What is today? It's the 12th.
We'll be back.
We'll be back, 11 days. And talking about whatever it is. But again, if you have not upgraded your Jenkins infrastructure yet to be running the bits using Java 11, that's your homework.
Yeah. Now, we do have some data to support this, though, right? There's the fun that Basil Crow shared with us recently. That's
right.
Hey, the numbers are showing that Java 8 usage with Jenkins controllers continues to decrease. Yes, yep. Thank you, everybody. That's the right direction. And Java 11 usage numbers continue to increase. Again, that's the right thing. So thank you. So the data supports the change in addition to the fact that we're doing the change.
And 17 is also going, okay, 11's going, here, I'll get my hand right. 11's going that way, 17's going that way. And that's okay. That's actually better.
Right.
Because again, the last time a version of Java was dropped was in 2019, over 3 years ago.
Right.
So if you're planning on Java 17 becoming the next major to where Java 11's dropped, can't say exactly, but round numbers, 2024, 2025.
Yeah,
right.
And it depends on the life cycle of Java 11. So
right.
I know there are those who want it sooner. There are some who want it later. We'll see how the project shakes it out.
Right. But just in general, if you look over the history, it's roughly every 2 to 3 years that one is dropped. So, but now 8 is being dropped. Mm-hmm. That's a non-negotiable, by the way. So get to 11. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us live here. If you're watching this replay and you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, go ahead and click on subscribe and ring the bell, do all the normal YouTube things. And there's a lot of content that we put out. We do some of these lives here. I also do a lot of videos that come out on usually Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9 a.m. Eastern, just about content about Jenkins or about CloudBees CI. And there's a lot of other things. Anything that's going on at CloudBees ends up on that channel, which is now where we're at, which is weird. We're incepting here at CloudBees TV. So anyway, it is Friday. Everybody have a great weekend. And we'll talk to you in a few weeks. And here we go.